I'm just not very interested in seeing Justin Gaethje fight Ilia Topuria. I've seen 2 Justin
Uh,
Gaethje title shots.
I'm pushing back at you, dude. I mean,
Okay.
if you love fighting, I mean, how can we not have fun watching Justin Gaethje against Ilia Topuria fight in there?
Welcome back to Against the Cage, the MMA show where we break down the latest news in combat sports, preview the biggest cards, and recap the biggest cards, which we will be doing on today's show. But make sure you give us a like and subscribe if you don't want to miss any of that good stuff. I'm here with my co-host, Scott Fontana. Our other co-host, Eric Richter, is out on vacation this week, so wishing him a very nice, relaxing, well-deserved vacation. But Scott, we're
Is it
coming.
deserved? I don't know. I don't know about that
Okay,
now.
come on now. No, I think it is. I think it is. But listen, we're coming off of the heels of a pretty damn good pay-per-view. It had some very good fights, some crazy knockouts. So for UFC 317, I have to ask, how big of a win was this for the UFC? Because it feels like it's been a while.
No, honestly, I really do think this was exactly what the UFC needed. They have faced a lot of criticisms week to week, event to event, for various things. Like, oh, we don't like the quality of our Apex shows, we don't like the fight nights and that kind of thing. Some of these are things are deserved, absolutely. They have consistently put out pay-per-view products that have been of a high caliber, if you ask me. And I think this was one in particular where it absolutely showed the power that the UFC can deliver when everything is working, when not only they have the synergy of their top fights out there that are truly usually tend to be very, very high caliber fights that ought to be watched, but when they deliver the action in the cage as well, and even outside of those main fights, that's where you start to get into that territory. Is like, oh, this is the UFC rolling. Giant win for them, absolutely.
Yeah, and like I kind of mentioned at the end of that question, like it feels like we kind of haven't seen this in a while. And for me, as a fan, and the people that I watch with and talk to every day about MMA, their hopes were kind of down about maybe how this first half of the year has gone for the UFC. We've seen big stars like Alex Pereira lose. These are fighters that people like to see win because they've got the name value and all that. Some of the pay-per-view headliners weren't the things that we wanted to see. We were hoping for Ilya Islam, maybe for the lightweight title, Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili, which we talked about. Like, there wasn't any great other options for it, but it just kind of felt lackluster and things like that. It from just the fans that I've talked to, your everyday fans, it felt like the UFC had kind of lost a little bit of its luster in terms of the excitement and some of that kind of stuff. But coming off the heels of this card, it really has been revitalizing, not just, seeing some great fights, but sort of the outlook on the future going forward, especially with this Ilia Topuria knockout over Charles Oliveira. Said it right there. He said that in the lead up of this fight that that's exactly what he was going to do. Went out there, did the thing, and right after he does it, when he gets onto the microphone, Joe Rogan is talking with him, and the UFC live production team shows the 3 lightweight contenders that have been calling for a title shot at 155: Paddy Pimblett, Arman Tsarukyan, Justin Gaethje. Let's play a little game here, Scott. We'll do who do you think the UFC wants most, Ilya, and then who do you want most? So let's start with the UFC. Who do you think that the UFC wants the most out of those 3 guys?
I think the UFC has to want Paddy Pimblett there. I mean, they've been pushing him as a star for quite a while. He has crossed over into the realm of awareness, probably outside of the UFC's own marketing push. That is, I mean, by definition, that's kind of a crossover star. It's not the same thing as what we're talking about, a Ronda Rousey crossing over into public consciousness in a very different way. But I think he absolutely carries the most star power into that. So the UFC has to want him next. It's almost a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for the guys like Arman Tsarukyan, like again, he's a great fighter, and Justin Gaethje, I think he has at least some recognition because he's been around for a while and always delivers. But Patty is a little bit of a different animal, and he also has all the support over in Europe as well, which is like a very different audience than Justin Gaethje brings in. And even Arman Sarukian, who is, yes, he's from Eastern Europe, but we're talking about Western Europe, a little bit of a different audience there, the UK in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's kind of a no-brainer. This is a anecdote that I actually wanted to share after the UFC 314 card, which of course Patty fought on, but I didn't get the chance to. It slipped my mind. But so that fight I was watching in South Carolina with my family and my little cousins. It was their prom. They were hosting it at their home, and I was watching with my cousin, my uncle, and one of the kids from his class comes up and he's like, "What are you guys watching?" I'm like, "I'm watching UFC." Who's fighting? Like Alex Volkanovski. He's taking on this young, hungry contender. He's like, "I don't know any of those guys." I was like, "Do you know who Patty Pimblett is?" He was like, "Oh yeah, I know who Patty Pimblett is." So like that just goes to show like he's breaking through the masses. He's got a big name, and I think that, like you said, it's kind of a no-brainer that that's who the UFC would probably want in that shot, just from a numbers perspective. But next, the guy who won on Saturday night. Who do you think that Ilia wants next?
Ilia Topuria most definitely wants Islam Makhachev next. I don't think anyone is going to be surprised to hear that. Having said that, that is not what's next. I think it would be great if the UFC pivoted away from their plan to have Islam fight against Jack Della Maddalena, but it is Islam's plan too. That's what he wants. So I don't think he is thinking about going back to that. It would probably take a lot. Although, I mean, I don't know. You probably talked to some of your friends, and I've talked to a few friends of mine, and they're like, "Yeah, why don't we just do that? That's crazy. Everyone should just support this plan." It's really not going to happen.
Yeah.
Sorry. Maybe at some point. But who among the realistic situations, the realistic scenarios are is Ilya most probably interested in facing? My guess would probably also be Patty. Although I think he's probably just a little less choosy about it. I don't think it matters distinctly to him. Because he's outlined scenarios where all of these guys end up fighting for the right to fight him. He's not necessarily itching for any of them to jump right in. Someone's going to. It would probably be Patty because they do have that bad blood. I think there's at least something to that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'm not sure how much he's interested by Gaethje, but I mean you've got to think that he would take any one of those fights. Like he's not scared of taking any of those opponents. But I agree with you. Hearing some of
Definitely not
no,
scared.
no, no, no,
No.
no, definitely not. And I don't think he really cares who it is at the end of the day. But like you said, I think he just maybe wants to see one more win out of some of those guys. But
It's not going to happen though. Someone's
yeah,
going
no,
to fight them. I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah, that's the
realistically,
reality.
the only thing would be if for some reason they can't figure out a way to get Ilya into the cage by the end of the year. If they start pushing into next year, maybe some of these guys are keeping busy a little bit. I mean, we have Justin Gaethje as kind of through his management has said, "Oh, I'm only fighting for the title, or I'm going to retire." And you got Arman saying, "Congratulations on your retirement." There's a lot of very disinterested. Dana White is entirely unfazed by this. So realistically, it's not the greatest strategy. I know Eric's a big fan of that strategy. He loved it. I never was really a big fan of it. Sorry, Eric. Hope you enjoy your vacation. But but yeah, I think it's almost definitely going to be Paddy Pimblett or Arman Saruki, and that would be who I think it's going to be at the end of the day.
Yeah, and before we get to the last question, shout out to the interview that you did this week with Arman, and he seemed very adamant that he wants to be next for that title shot. That he's deserving. He's the number one contender, and he said he would be in a pretty bad mood if that would not be his next fight, which I can definitely understand.
No, I get it. I mean, look, I think there's at least an element of this that he understands. Like, look, I had my shot and it didn't work out. I think he does get that there was that component which cost him the opportunity. But I think the way he sees it based on, and you should watch that interview. I hope you go watch it on this channel on YouTube or wherever it is you're watching and listening to us. Um, I do think that he's just frustrated with the idea that the the more sports entertainment elements of it, the WWE elements of it,
Yep.
take precedence over the sporting element of it. So, and look, I get it. I mean, he is the number one contender. It would be silly for him to go two times being skipped over from a sporting perspective, but that's not exactly how it always goes.
Yeah, I think you just kind of outlined it. My takeaway from it was that he's not necessarily so upset that, there might have been one. Obviously, Charles was the one that went up first. It's not necessarily that he wouldn't be next, but it's like if you tell me that my next fight is going to be another title eliminator, that's going to make me upset, which I get. So coming off the heels of that, who do you, Scott Fontana, want most for Ilia Topuria at 155?
I lean Armin's way. Again, I'm much more of the sport element than the entertainment element. Eric's box office. I'm more like, hey, let's get the sport going. I really want number one to fight the champ. That's how my mindset is always going to be geared. There are certain fights where it's like, hey, I get it, and I'm okay with it. But I don't know that the mandate is here that it has to be Paddy Pimblett because he is so much more entertaining. Like he's not going anywhere. Patty's not going anywhere. Armin's really not going anywhere either. Armand, excuse me. But I think we really just got to get the sport going in a way that allows Ilia Topuria to be the definitive champion, having knocked off the number one contender, which he did not do yet. That is really the only thing that could have been within his control. He could not fight Islam Makhachev to win the belt. That was what he wanted, but at least beat the number one guy. And I think once we do that, he can fight anybody at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I wholeheartedly agree with you. If I have one choice, I'm picking Arman Sarukian. The fight in January, watching, the idea that Arman would be challenging for the title at 155, that was one of my most anticipated fights for the year. Or just like honestly, one of the most anticipated fights that I've been like just so excited to see a title fight. Like it really was number one versus number two. And yeah, so I would love to see that. I agree with you. Some of the, we talk about the sports entertainment. A lot of the time, the sporting aspect becomes the entertainment for some fans, and I definitely like that as much as yourself. I would be okay with Patty. I love Justin, I do, but like that one is very much lower for me. I'm just not very interested in seeing Justin Gaethje fight Ilia Topuria. I've seen two Justin Gaethje title shots. Yeah,
Oh
go
man,
ahead.
I'm pushing back at you, dude. I mean,
Okay.
if you love fighting, I mean, how can we not have fun watching Justin Gaethje against Ilia Topuria fight in there? And I don't even think he's like totally undeserving of the title shot. It's a lightweight has always been very crowded, especially when you go back to the glut that Conor McGregor caused by not fighting for so long.
Yeah,
It like we've still been recovering from that to some degree. Like we've
sure.
gotten back to good points, and now we're bunched up again, unfortunately. Islam Makhachev, great champion and one of the greatest fighters of all time. Also, not the most active of champions either. That has kind of created this a little bunch up as well. So I can't have any problem with Justin Gaethje getting the fight, not only on merit, but frankly, that might be the most entertaining of the three fight combinations we get. So how can you hate it?
I just feel like no disrespect to Justin because like he's awesome. He puts on entertaining fights. But after what we just saw on Saturday night, I'm like, God, Max floored him at the end of that, UFC 300 fight. I feel like if Ilya is doing that to these other guys in the first round, I feel like it's nothing's predetermined in MMA, but I'm just like, dude,
Nope.
he's just
But it's
gonna.
gonna be fun while we go. Come
Yes, yes,
on.
that's true. That's true. Listen, I think I say this all the time. Sometimes I like poo poo things, and then the second I get like right before the main events, they're doing their walkouts. I'm like, all right, I'm back into it. So yeah, I
You're
would.
usually Mr. Positivity. That's fine.
There we go. There we go. But let us know, guys, in the comments who you would like to see next. Do you like Patty, Armon, or Justin? You could say Islam if you wanted to. That's what we all secretly want. So you could say that as well. But yeah, let us know those
Pull
three for
anybody
sure.
out.
Yeah.
Do you really want Benil Dariush to come back into it? I mean, that's your
Mateus
call, guys.
Gamrot. Come on, man. Give that guy a title shot. Seriously.
Nish Gamera had a good fight with Armin one time.
He did. He did. So that's not the only thing that we have to talk about as far as what happened afterwards. Those three men being shown. Joe Rogan eventually calls in Paddy Pimblett into the octagon, and they do a little face-off with each other. They're talking some smack. Ilia has a little bit of a tough time pushing Paddy because he's got 2 belts on his shoulders, but he gives it his best shot, and that was a funny little moment. But in the post-fight press conference, someone asked Dana what he thought about that, and Dana said he didn't know about it, and he was pretty upset about it. One of the reasons that he listed was because Ilia's family was in there. You don't bring a fighter in when they've got their kids and family in there. Scott, do you agree with Dana? Should Dana be mad about this?
As a father, I can definitely relate to what Dana White is talking about here. I mean, we don't want to do those type of things when there are children and wives present and things like that. It creates a dangerous scenario for people who are not prepared to defend themselves against grown men. Not that Paddy Pimblett was going to go in there and punch Ilia's kids or his his family or anything like that. That was never in the conversation, but crazy things can happen. There's a lot of bodies in there. Someone does get pushed. What if someone gets hurt? That's not the type of thing they want. Having said that, he still stumbled into something really great for the UFC. So, like, I definitely can relate to why they don't want to create that particular situation again. And the UFC did not manufacture it. That was something Joe Rogan kind of put together on the fly because he noticed Ilia Topuria calling out, all these people, Arman Sarukian being the one who couldn't, make weight because of his back injury, and then, Paddy Pimblett, that blonde guy or whatever he said. He caught that part. He didn't catch the Arman part, so he didn't necessarily. I don't know that he meant to skip over Arman Sarukian, but he definitely caught that one. And that was clearly what created that, hey, let's get him in the cage kind of thing. And Paddy just went. He just went for it. So I still don't think the UFC should be disappointed with the way things shook out, but yes, he can absolutely. Dana White really ought to be displeased at the nature of it, and not just because he's a little bit of a control freak for his product, which he is. I
Yeah.
think that's an element of that, but yeah, I don't think it's just that.
For me, I feel like there's got to be a part of Dana that like sits Joe down as like you can't just like because there's 3 guys. We were just talking about the fact that like Arman he could get a title shot, and while the UFC probably does want Paddy next, it's not like a decided thing. So I feel like he's got to tell Joe like, hey man, like I appreciate what you're doing, but like you can't just make decisions on who like you call into the octagon to make it look like this is 100% the next fight. Giving that kind of control to Joe, I feel like leave it for Tuesday.
Yeah. The fighter meeting on Tuesday, of course. We'll do matchmaking then. Yeah, I don't know how those conversations go between Dana and Joe. I think they've been working together for so long, and Joe obviously has a very elevated status outside of the UFC. He would do extremely well even if he decided he never wanted to do UFC fights again.
Sure.
So there's a little bit of I wonder if maybe there is, like you said, maybe kind of a friendly conversation, but I don't know how that goes. Who knows?
Yeah. So we'll still wait and find out if Paddy is the guy that ends up challenging for that title next, or if it's what you and I prefer, Arman or Justin Gaethje, which I will suck it up and I'll watch that fight if that's the case.
The only thing that I would add to this is the fact that I don't think what happened in there is going to affect how the UFC does things negatively. Like again, they were given a gift that they would have preferred was put together differently, but it still helped them. So if they think that that's where the money goes, and maybe they're still not happy with Arman Sarukian for one reason or another, I don't know how they're going to handle that, but I would think they're not going to be, well, we're going to hold that against Paddy because he came in the cage. That is
No,
not
of course
happening.
not. Yeah, and we'll get to another little post-fight octagon entrance, if you will, later on. But like I mentioned before, Ilia Topuria had been saying all week that he was going to knock out Charles in the first round. Another guy who has been, touted for his mystic abilities to call his shot is Conor McGregor, and the comparisons are. It's tough to say that they're not warranted, right? Ilia has like kind of in his own efforts tried to replicate some of the things, the Volkanovski press conference, he's holding up the belt after he stole it, that kind of thing. But let's move away from maybe comparing this to Connor's past and look towards Ilya's future. I think it's safe to say, while people have been making comparisons to him and Connor's, rise to fame, that we might not ever have someone at that level. I don't think that Ilya is there yet. But where do you think Ilya's past path goes from here? Do you think that he could get there?
So Ilya is fascinating in the sense that I don't think, yes, he has absolutely done so many things in the same kind of path that Conor McGregor had carved, right? He came up as a featherweight, became this big star based on knockouts and all that kind of thing. He won the belt, he moved up and he got the second belt, right? And he's doing it while making all these predictions. He's emulating some of the tactics in promotion. I mean, he's even got, there's even some tattooing that's like at least almost adjacent to what Conor McGregor has done with his body art and that kind of thing, right? Um, there is one thing that I think absolutely, well, there's going to be a bunch of things, but I'm going to focus on this one right
There
now.
are a bunch.
There is yeah, we're not talking about a person who is still in legal hot water over a rape case,
Yeah.
that which is still ongoing, and you can Google the details of that one regarding Conor McGregor. But with Ilia Topuria, I think the difference between him and Conor is the fact that this is a man who's really about the fighting. And I don't know that Connor always was. I think he
Mm-hmm.
found it, and I think his coaches were able to hone him in on it at SBG in Ireland. And I think they were able to get him to realize that he could be great at this. And not only his confidence was there, but he did have that fighting ability. But he's kind of always been like a party animal. Like this was the man who he was. I think Ilya really is about the fighting.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the major difference from here, where Ilia Topuria's path is going to be carved differently. Will he become as gigantic a star as Conor McGregor? I think it's going to be hard. I think Conor had a lot of things working for him that are not replicable. And I think for Ilya, I think he's going to be more focused on the fighting, and that's almost going to be his detriment to becoming a gigantic star on the level of a Conor McGregor. But I think he's still got so much in him to become the face of the UFC, which he probably already is. I mean, let's face it, if he wasn't
Yeah.
before, he is now
Agreed.
after this weekend. And I think he's got potential to sustain that for a while. Fighting is a hard sport to stay on top of for a long time, and lightweight is a really hard weight class to stay on top of. But I think if anyone has the capability, it is him. And he's already got plenty of options out there. Let's say he goes out and he knocks down, in sequence of some order of Paddy Pimblett, Arman Sarukian, and Justin Gaethje. I think we're really talking about somebody who has done something that the lightweight division has rarely said, especially if you can go out and finish these guys, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I like what you mentioned about him kind of being way more focused on being like an athlete than Conor McGregor maybe had. If you watch like old interviews of Conor, you could kind of tell that wasn't his goal. He's like, I'm here to get rich quick and get out, that kind of thing. Ilias, he shares a bunch of footage of his training back home, and this whole facility that he's built pretty much into his home. It's more of a lifestyle. Like, he wants to be great and get his performance better. So I definitely
I
like
think
that
that's that
point.
greatness. It's the greatness that you bring up. Yeah, I think that's what drives him. He really wants to be regarded as like the greatest of all time. Connor just wanted to declare he was.
Yeah.
He was content to get one belt. He didn't feel the need to defend it, which Ilya did. He did it in emphatic fashion. He
Hmm.
defended it. Would I have loved to have seen him defend that featherweight title a few more times? Sure, but he's telling us he can't make the weight anymore. I accept that. I'm cool with that. Let him go up to 155, and if he can get together a nice sustained, like I said, string of title fights here, we're talking about somebody truly special. I mean, we already are watching it, right, in progress.
Yeah, and the stuff in Europe that you see on social media, like he's hanging out with Sergio Ramos and like all these other huge people in European sport. he is like a superstar over there, way more than I think we realize over here in America.
He has
So
been for a while too.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the thing. We're catching up. We're America. We're the center of the world, right? In a
yeah,
lot of ways, that's how we think of ourselves,
sure,
right? But outside, yes, I mean, he had this massive following, and now we're just starting to catch up.
yeah. So we'll see if he can maybe get some of that over here. I think he's just starting to, like you just said, and with performances like that, how could you not, right? But so the
Mhm.
other guy that was standing at the other end of the octagon on Saturday night, Charles do Bronx Oliveira, one of the most beloved fighters in the lightweight division. We had to watch him get knocked out, like so many of our other favorites, Max Holloway and Alex Volkanovski. It was a tough pill for me to swallow on Saturday night. I don't know if you could tell.
As a
Also,
fan, yeah.
the guys that I watch with are huge Ilia Topuria fans, like massive, and I love Charles. So there was so much smack talk going back and forth between us, and when it happened, and then I look over to my buddy who's got a big grin on his face. But so I have to
What can you
ask you,
do?
yeah, I gotta stop caring so much about these fighters, man. Um,
Okay to
but
care about your fellow human. That's
yeah,
fine.
no, I know, get invested. It's just gets your heart
You're a
broken.
fan. You can fan out a little bit. I have trouble doing that now. I try not to do that so much. I had my guys that I rooted for. I was a giant Lyoto Machida fan. You can see him over my shoulder right here.
Yes,
There we
yeah.
go. And yeah, I don't know if I'm showing up on the camera right now because I'm crunched in, but
I'll edit
he's
it.
on
I'll
my
edit
shoulder.
it.
Yeah, you got that. You got that. Big supporter of him and all that kind of thing. I had those guys, but now I try a little less to do that. I cover the sport. It's a little different.
I've noticed that's happened a little bit with me over time, but Charles was
Mhm.
one of the big guys that I was watching when I just got invested in this sport. So
Right.
I have to ask you, from this is a question from the heart. Is this the end of Charles Oliveira's championship road?
Short version or long version?
Short and then long.
Yeah, it's the end.
Yeah, yeah.
Look, three losses in his last five. They are all to the elite at lightweight, but that's also a gate that's been closed in and of itself. He's 35, just lost by a brutal knockout. He's taken a lot of damage in some of these last few years, these wars that you've seen and become a fan on. There is no path back to gold for Charles do Bronx Oliveira. This is, if he wants to keep fighting, he can do it. But I think the idea that he's got one more title run in him, I would close the door.
Yeah, I agree. I think after that first Armon loss, I kind of accepted that, and then so much hope for this fight. But no, like after this happens, it's pretty much a door shut. I think that one interesting thing, if he did want to stick around, which I think he does, and the UFC's obviously happy to have him. He's still, as far as the lightweight roster, he's one of the biggest stars. I mean, in the UFC in general, he's one of the most beloved fighters. That's what I've been saying. I think that an interesting one would be if. Max, honestly, if Max either wins or loses the Dustin fight coming up in the next pay per view, I think that would be a pretty good fight. Those guys haven't fought yet. Max is at 155 now. Why not? Right. So that's
It
one for
would it
me.
would be, I mean, you're talking about something like if Dustin Poirier does not beat Max Holloway for that BMF belt on his way out the door into retirement, Max Holloway holds that belt. I can't think of anybody who's probably more deserving to fight for a BMF belt than Charles do Bronx
Yeah,
Oliveira
that's
in
not
that
bad.
weight class. So look, the BMF belt, it is a little silly. It's still just a promotional tool, but in the spirit of what it's meant to be, that makes a lot of sense.
I like that. I didn't even think about the BMF belt, to be completely honest, which I know that's like the
But if
thing
that, it
that's up
does
for
factor
grabs.
in,
It does. It actually
yeah.
does, which is crazy because like I feel like after the Jorge Nate one, we were just like, guys, come on, like what are we doing here? And then Max, that knockout at 300 kind of maybe brought some legitimacy back to it. So
I think it helps. I think it helps that they have put it at the right weight class. I don't know that 170 was the right weight class for
I
that. I think
agree.
155, you've got a lot more kill. I mean, you could throw that down to 135 or something like that if they have to. I'm not the biggest fan of the BMF belt, and I mean, Arman Sarukian said I wouldn't fight for the BMF belt. I want to fight for the 155 belt. He's not WWE, right? That's not his thing. So I lean that way too. So.
Yeah. Well, you know who does have a real belt and retained it on Saturday night is Alexandre Pantoja, submitting Kai Kara France. I, he looked to me unstoppable. And while Demetrius Johnson has, an insurmountable amount of title defenses. We're in this new age, and things seem, more impressive. We got recency bias. I still don't think that he's quite reached the GOAT status at flyweight as Demetrius Johnson. But my question to you is, how far do you think that Alexandre can go, Scott?
The GOAT status at flyweight is almost unreachable.
Yeah.
at least for Alexandre Pantoja, unless he can put together just a wild second half of his 30s. I mean, that would
Yeah.
be really
And
hard to do.
he's
He already
35, right?
he's 35. He broke the 35 and older curse in a new way because I mean, we've had this before, we've seen it before.
Volk recently,
Um
yeah.
but now we have he's the first fighter at 155 or below to defend
Yeah.
a UFC belt at that age. I think it's done. I think this is the last time we need to be talking about this anymore. He killed it. He absolutely killed it. The cannibal ate it.
Yes, he did.
But
There you go.
he just gobbled it up there. But man, yeah, he did look unstoppable against Kai Kara-France. I think I talked to a few friends who've been following the sport as long as I have that really just did not see why Kai Kara-France would even have earned that opportunity. And honestly, he didn't look like he belonged in there. That was how good Alexandre Pantoja looked. As far as how far he could go, man, it's going to depend, I think, on how developed this next class of flyweight contenders are. We're talking about, I named them last week, but Amir Albazi, Tatsuro Taira, Tahir Ulanbekov. I mean, even potentially a rematch against Manel Kopp that he's been kind of hovering around. He's got to stay, healthy and get hot and that kind of thing. But these are who he's going to be looking at probably in the next 2 years or so, depending on how the fights go. But you never know. Van came out of nowhere. No one thought he was
Yes,
going
he
to be
did.
anything so quick. Not necessarily ever, but so quick to start the year. And here he is. He's the bona fide, undoubted top contender. So there's names that can come out. There's a lot of possibilities, but it's going to be tricky. Are these guys ready for Alexandre Pantoja? And is Alexandre Pantoja still feeling young enough? He told me he still plays video games. He's still a young guy. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm 40. I still play video games. Whatever.
Video games are awesome. No, but I agree. As far as this Van Pantoja fight, which we'll talk in just a moment about that face to face that they had similar to Ilya and Patty. I don't see it as far like Pantoja looked so unstoppable. I think he's just such a complete fighter, and especially on the ground, like it's crazy, man. He's like a flyweight like Khabib with like even more like of a submission game. It seems like he loves backpacking. He's got the whole thing. I don't know, man. So, but like it's this something that you and I had talked about this week is like everyone loses. I just mentioned Khabib. Like
I
not
do.
everyone gets to retire on top, and almost never happens. So
His case was so rare because it was created by a terribly unfortunate
yeah.
array of circumstances beyond his control. COVID takes over the world, takes the life of his father, unfortunately and tragically, before he's done, and his mother promises him, "Hey, don't fight anymore," and he says, "Okay, I'm actually going to listen to you, mom," which is most kids don't really do. I have kids, they don't listen to me. So they don't listen to their mother either. No one is going to walk that path. Again, frankly, I don't think. I think everybody is going to suffer that loss. But and look, Pantoja has lost, right? It's
Yep.
not that he has never lost before. He's lost in the UFC. You could even pull back some of those decisions. I think you could make a case that he actually beat Askar Askarov in the last loss that he had. But yes, this is a man who suffered setbacks. Everybody does.
Yeah. So, like I just mentioned before, Van and Pantoja had that face to face in the octagon, and this one, unlike the Patty one, which seems like probably will be it seems like pretty undoubtedly clear that Joshua Van is going to be the next man to challenge for that title. Did you like that? Do you think that we should see more of these same night bookings and octagon face offs afterwards? What do you think about that, Scott?
So obviously they kind of did that in the main event and Dana got mad, but that was because it was outside of the UFC's control in a sense, right?
Hmm.
This was manufactured by the UFC when they realized just how great an opportunity had been gifted to them just a few minutes earlier with Joshua Van and Brandon Royval having this just tremendous war of a fight for 15 minutes. I mean, they would have, and it was a very clear number one contender level fight because you've got Brandon Royval, who is the number one. Unfortunately, had lost a couple times to Alexandre Pantoja, was in a bit of a no man's land. But if you get a young guy who comes in and already won a month before, and he goes in and he definitively beats that other guy who's number one in one of the greatest fights of the year, I mean, how do you deny that? That was the type of thing that it was gift wrapped to them in a great way, and they ran with it. But they should do more. Yes, to your point. I would love to see them try to do that a little bit more. There's always oh, we'll have the Tuesday meeting. It's like, do you really expect me to believe that this billion-dollar company doesn't have contingency plans and thought about certain possibilities coming to fruition at this event, and they're just going to think about it that next week? I understand they're probably not ready to announce it because they have their cadence that they like to do. Eric's favorite thing, the midweek
Yeah, the
fight
Instagram
announcements.
live.
They do it for Eric at this point, definitely for 100%. Uh, but man, if they would just do it on the event, then you've already got the momentum. Everybody's watching. Just get it ready for the next one. I don't see anything wrong with doing that. It's not going to work every time, but man, try to make more of these.
Yeah, and one thing too is like Dana in that room, like sometimes when people ask those questions, he's like, why are you asking me this question? Like, I always give the same answer, but he doesn't. Sometimes he's like, yeah,
It is not true.
yeah. He's like,
Yeah.
sometimes he's like, yes, that's definitely the next fight. We're going to do that one. And that's like the first time that like we're officially getting it. So it's like, obviously,
And this is why we ask.
yeah, 85% of the time it's Tuesday, but 10% of the time even it's like, yeah, that's the fight. So yeah, might as well ask, right? But like,
And it's the dance that he accepts, I think, from the media, from
Yeah.
from the assembled media. I think there's, I don't know how much Dana White loves to do these. I think
I don't
in
think
some
he
ways he
does.
does, sometimes he doesn't. I think there are parts of it he actually doesn't mind doing. I mean, he certainly doesn't mind being the face of the UFC. That was a conscious choice that he's continued for decades now. But yeah, I think he accepts that, hey, you're gonna ask the question, I'm gonna give the answer. Maybe you'll catch me in the right mood and I'll give it. It is what it is. In one of his favorite phrases. So yeah, it's just part of the deal.
Yeah, but looking back on that Van and Pantoja matchup, I mean, some of the stuff that we talked about at flyweight, and I think probably we mentioned this last week as well, is like it seemed like a little bit of a bleak thing at flyweight because there's so many matchups that had already happened and there wasn't a ton of excitement. But Van beats the number one contender, and all love to Brandon Royval. But if he had won that fight, it would have been like, are we going to see another rematch with Alexandre Pantoja? So it was a huge breath of
You might
fresh
not
air.
have. You might
Yeah,
not have.
honestly,
So yeah.
the number one contender beating a guy and then doesn't get the title shot. Like that's how crammed up flyweight kind of was. So Josh Van getting that win, very big breath of fresh air for flyweight. And when you beat the number one contender, like yeah, you can make that fight. So that was good. I think
You become the man if you beat the man.
exactly. I
And
feel
the
like
man, he's the man under the man, but we're still talking about the same thing.
yes, yeah. So I feel like pretty much everyone wins in that scenario, and we'll get to winners and losers a little bit later on. But I have to ask you, as far as we just mentioned, Van versus Brandon Royval, people have been talking about it as fight of the year. Do you think, Scott, that it is the fight of the year?
Yeah, I put a lock on it on social media. I guess I have to stick to that one if I put that out there in the moments after it
I
happened.
think
Like
you're
I can't
safe.
back down from that, right? Oh, I can back down from that. I'm still not going to. I'm actually going to put that as the fight of the year. It's really close though. I really toyed with thinking about Belal Muhammad against Jack Della Maddalena. That was the obvious one, and we can't forget just how fantastic that fight was. It really is one of the greatest welterweight fights of all time. So I think that just speaks to the strength of um, some of the incredible fights that the UFC is able to put together, even at the top of cards and near the top of cards, right? I'll throw one more out there for you, Merab Dvalishvili against Umar Nurmagomedov. You love that one, right?
So that my first one, my contingency or my first pick for runner up was Bilal Muhammad, and my third was Umar and Merab.
But which of those three do you like best? I mean,
Oh, I've
obviously
gotta
we've got this
go.
big one.
If I have to pick one, I have to pick the fight we just saw, Van versus Brandon Royval. Just the literally the
Is it recency bias or is it
a
just a better
little bit.
fight?
I think it is just a better fight. Just the fact that it was literally nonstop fists being thrown. Like there was no break in the action whatsoever. And then
It was wild, yeah.
yeah, pretty close behind it, but like definitively second is Bilal Muhammad and JDM. And then the Marab and Umar fight, great fight, obviously, but I think that one is a little bit there's a little more space from that one between the other two for me.
For
So
sure, for sure, for sure. You know what, Jake? I want to change it up on you because I think we're probably going to close out here with winners and losers, like you mentioned. And I want to ask you first.
yeah.
Who were your winners and losers off of this card?
Okay, so my winner, it's not a terribly big shock, but I'm gonna go Peyton Talbot on this one, and just because of the fact it's not that he just got the win, but he definitely silenced some of the doubts that were opened up in that Hayoni Barcelos loss that he had back in January. So he was able to show that hey, this isn't necessarily a hole in my game that's going to be to my detriment and not get to the level that people thought that I could get to. So I think that that was huge for him. My loser, and I not to pour salt on a wound, but my God, Jack Hermanson, like that was a brutal knockout, and you could maybe say Herb Dean in that as well because he didn't get there in time. But to be fair, that was a pretty quick knockout. I don't know if I would have gotten there either. What do you think, Scott?
You would not have gotten there.
No, I
Herb
would
Dean
not have.
has a little more. He's got better reflexes for that kind of thing. You're
Yeah,
a quick guy. You do jujitsu. You know, you're not the biggest guy, so you can quick twitch a little better than Herb Dean is a bigger guy. But yeah, as far as winners and losers, I like your choices. I actually would agree with you on Peyton Talbot being a big winner because yes, that was a big setback for a prospect who was kind of shooting through the roof. Tough loss to swallow if he loses twice. What does
what do
that
you
do to
do?
him as a
Yeah,
prospect? Yeah, it certainly derails him in a major way. It doesn't kill his career, but it's not good. Felipe Lima was a really tough test, and I think he still passed that in a way that showed some grit, right? That showed, okay, maybe this is the level he's at now.
a
Let's
lot of
keep
questions
bring him
answered.
on a little slower. So I like that. Real quick, another winner, I will say, RoboCroc, Gregory Rodriguez in there getting that knockout over Jacker Manson. My loser of the night is Renato Moicano
Yeah,
because this was a fight that really was winnable for him.
hmm
He'd already won the first round, and he just
he
did
looked
not do
great.
enough in those
Yeah,
two. Just didn't do enough in the final 10 minutes of the fight. He really didn't have to do much more to get that win. And this is a big setback because it doesn't look good. It's a loss that should have probably been a win if he just found that extra gear a little bit more. And again, he's already lost a championship fight. It's to a different champion. I think it's not closing the door in the same way that a Charles Oliveira is, but Renato Moicano's kind of an older prospect that I mean
yes,
not prospect anymore. He's far from a prospect at this point. He's an older fighter.
yeah.
We're not talking about someone who's only 31. I mean, he's kind of in that, later stages of his career kind of thing. Just doesn't seem it because we haven't seen him as much over the years at this level. So it's it's a big loss. I think it's a big loss.
Yeah, absolutely. Switching gears from UFC to PFL, which is this weekend, they've got two events. They've got PFL MENA 2 and PFL Europe 2. Let's first look at what happened over the weekend, though. And we have our three finals for 185, 205, and heavyweight. I'll read those out to you, Scott, so you got them fresh in your mind. 185, Fabian Edwards versus Dalton Rasta. 205, Sullivan Cauley versus Antonio Carlos Jr. And at heavyweight, Alexander Romanov versus Oleg Popov. Out of those three finals, which one do you like the most?
I like Fabian Edwards against Dalton Rasta the most, and frankly, a lot of it has to do with Dalton Rasta. I do want to see if he can get through this test here because if he can win the season, it sets up a very interesting middleweight title fight against Johnny Eblen. And Johnny Eblen is in desperate need of some interesting contenders to face, so I kind of like it based on the possibilities that could come from that. And also, it's not a heavyweight fight, so that's good.
There we go. I know you love your heavyweights, but I think something interesting happened to one of the said heavyweights, Alexander Romanov. I saw a clip on X, and let's just say it was a pretty gnarly shot to the gonads, a fight-ending shot to the
Awful.
gonads.
A
Scott,
fight-ending shot to the gonads, and it required them to, because it was the first round, it was a no contest, so it required PFL to task its judges with picking a winner of the fight for its tournament purposes, not
ooh,
for the win that itself, but because someone needs to go on, they asked the judges, okay, based on the limited action from the first round, who should win that fight for tournament purposes. It doesn't change their record. It's
yeah.
still a no contest. But they have a tournament. They need something, and that's where we got Alexander Romanov out of that one. And honestly, could have gone either way with Valentin Moldovsky. No, Valentin Moldovsky. No, who was the one? It was Valentin Moldovsky, I believe. Anyway, but yeah, so that was a tricky one.
Was this one of the worst nut shots you've seen as an MMA historian yourself?
It's up there. It's up there. I kind of default to Chris Tuchscherer, going way, way back to what was it, UFC 3 or 113
Is
or
this an
something like
extra
that. It was
credit
one of the
assignment?
no, no, I wouldn't wish that
Don't
on
watch
anybody. I
it.
certainly don't wish it on Chris Tuchscherer. And also Eric Prindle in Bellator way back in the day, kind of around the same time, took a disgustingly terrible nut shot as well. So yeah, those are my don't watch. But if you're kind of a sick individual and you want to see somebody get hit in the nuts really terribly, there you go.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's switch gears from that. Um, just a note, all the PFL finals will take place in August, starting August 1st at Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. Scott, we might be able to make it there, actually. It's not too far away.
You know, I'm trying to think of I have a concert I'm going to sometime around there, and I don't know if it's the same day, so I have to see.
We'll talk. We'll do some talking. So
We'll
like
figure it out.
I prefaced before, PFL MENA 2. We've got two event ratings, two events. Scott, give it to us. MENA 2 and PFL Europe 2. What do we got?
These are both substandard ratings. They do not reach the radar of any of the previous UFC cards, so they're in the 0 to negative range. They're purely
I didn't know
for
it could
like
go
we're
negative.
talking we're talking about regional fight level as well. I mean, I would say Europe is certainly the one that's more interesting. There is some talent on there of note that people will be aware of, but frankly, it's still very low level. For fans only. Like if you're a hardcore fight fan who just needs his fights on 4th of July weekend, uh, this could be a place to go. There's certainly other regionals you could check out, but yeah, we're talking about regional MMA.
Well, if you've got some time, I guess you could watch them. But yeah, thank you for that, Scott. And let's talk about some other regional MMA, or at least some lower promotions. Tough Enough. It's a regional promotion. It's on UFC Fight Pass. So we saw Sean Strickland and Chris Curtis. If you haven't seen this, you've been living under a rock because it was all over social media. A fighter who had won against one of their teammates. He kind of lets Chris Curtis and Sean Strickland know about it, as if they hadn't already seen it.
There's some DX chops in there. There's some gestures. There's some words. It's not polite.
Yeah. Anyways, Sean Strickland is not someone who takes kindly to something like that, as you would expect from his character. Jumps in with Chris Curtis. Chris is
Marches in the cage,
yeah,
all huffy
yes,
puffy.
marches into the cage. That was a pretty good impersonation, I will say. Sean
Thank you.
throwing some fists. Chris Curtis is less punchy, and he's more I'm gonna tell you how I feel kind of deal.
A little grabby
Yeah,
too.
he
He
does
put
shuck.
hands on
He
the
kind of does
fighter.
shuck Sean away, like stop throwing punches, and then gets right back to doing his thing. Um, but I have to ask you, what's like the fallout of this? It's just a crazy scenario.
It's that's the big thing. Like this wasn't just like a consequence 3 situation. This happened in Las Vegas. I mean, he trains and fights out of Las Vegas. The UFC has a lot of fights in Las Vegas, if we're not aware.
They do.
Um, there, so this would fall under the jurisdiction of the Nevada State Athletic Commission. Frankly, there's a decent chance that Sean Strickland gets suspended. I mean, I don't know how long it would be. But it could put him on the shelf at least for a little while because the Nevada Commission is not going to just tolerate this happening. It doesn't matter that it's Sean Strickland. He's not like some major star necessarily that they would want to make accommodation for. They want to send a message that these guys cannot touch other fighters if they're cornermen. I mean, there's a decent chance you won't see him in the corner for a long time too. I don't know how much that changes that as well, but yeah, I think he's going to face consequences. Chris Curtis, it's a little different. I think he might be able to escape some major consequences here, but incidentally, he is on the UFC card next weekend in Nashville, and Jeff Mullen, the head of the Nevada Commission, used to run the commission in Tennessee, his home state. There's at least going to be communication, one suspects, off of that. I don't know that it's going to lead to anything, but again, these guys created a situation they should not have. I mean, you got to maintain your cool.
Yeah, absolutely. After that bell or horn or whatever you're using rings, once the ref says the fight has stopped, it stops. Just because it takes place in an octagon doesn't mean it's not assault, basically, So that's something that you got to remember.
It could have been worse. It actually could have actually gotten even worse. But yeah, it was wrong. You're not supposed to do it. He knows that.
So that is our first smaller agenda item, but we have some other quick hits to get to. Scott, why don't you take it away for us?
Yeah, so this is the realm of kind of good news-ish on top of a bad situation. Former Bellator and one champion Ben Askren, he did finally receive the double lung transplant that he needed as he's been battling the terrible bout with pneumonia. His wife Amy said, so hopefully that's put him on the right track health-wise. I'm sure he's got a long road to recovery, and I believe his wife said every day is a gift now that they appreciate that. Terrible situation, but yes, it seems like they can now start to really move forward and maybe hopefully have escaped the worst. On a lighter note, Bo Nickel, another former amateur wrestler, he's going back to amateur style wrestling, freestyle wrestling, will compete for Real American Freestyle, but that's not going to change his status with the UFC. He's still going to be fighting for them as well. This is just kind of a side thing, kind of like how fighters do grappling tournaments. It's no different in terms of that, as far as I understand it. Ante Dalia, the former 2022 PFL heavyweight champion. He's going to make his UFC debut against Marcin Tybura in UFC Paris on September. I believe that was the 6th. I lost track of that. September 6th. Thank you. Interesting test for him. Tybura is kind of that gatekeeper to the upper levels. If you can't beat him, you're probably not going to get any higher. And then another former heavyweight champion in this case, Daniel Cormier. Unfortunate news for him. He found out after getting home from calling the action at UFC 317 that his truck was stolen from the San Jose airport. No word yet on if police have recovered, but best wishes to DC. We spoke to him a couple months ago, and I certainly hope that he's able to get his belongings back. That's rotten. No one should do that.
Yeah, DC was in high spirits though on his show with Chael, who we also had in that interview with yourself. I mean, the two of them promoting the Ultimate Fighter, of course, but on his show with Chael, he seemed in very high spirits. He took it on the chin, metaphorically speaking. He life is fine for him, he was saying, so but
it's just stuff, and I think he knows that.
Yes.
He's still got family, and I mean he's experienced personal tragedy, so he's been through worse.
Yes, absolutely. Scott, why don't we get to the final round? Let's talk about our homework assignment. This isn't just my homework assignment. This is a fight that you hadn't watched before. So actually, let me ask you, Scott, what did you think of the fight?
Dude, it was wild. I mean,
Yeah.
they literally from the bell, it's just boom, 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 boom. We got Don Fry and Yoshihiro Takayama, and in Pride, it was Pride 21, so we're talking about decades ago. But this is such a legendary fight. It's not just the fact that they did that off the bat and they're backing into the cage or into the post of the ring.
Yes.
Mind you, this was Pride. And just throw it. It almost looked scripted, but it wasn't. Like it looked legit, or at least it looked legit to me. You never know with Pride, but I'll take it. But they not only did it the first time, they do it later.
They do it again.
At some point, they do it again. They do it a third time.
Yeah. There was breaks of time, and then they decided, yes, this is a good idea. Let's do this again.
It's not nonstop action in the same way that we saw with, Joshua Van and Brandon Royval. Those are flyweights. They could go for, an hour doing that. this was about 7-ish minutes of that, and there were certainly breaks that needed to be taken from both men, particularly Takayama, who's very much slowing down, and that
Yeah.
was kind of what led to essentially the end as Fry gets them out, and he's in good spot, and it's over. Um, what a wonderful fight. I don't know how much you'd ever known about Don Fry in particular, Jake, but yeah, this was definitely a good entryway to the greatness of Don Fry.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do know him from his copious amount of Octagon side appearances. He's, a big fan, it seems like, and
Guy in a
he
hat.
yes, absolutely. So I mean, he's a badass. And when this fight happened, I've seen the clip of them holding on to each other and punching like crazy. I've seen that like it's in memes and just like clips and all over MMA Twitter. And so when this happened, when the bell rung and then they started doing that immediately, you should have seen the smile on my face, Scott. I was like, okay, this was a good one, and now I know that like where this one is from. My MMA lore knowledge has gotten that much deeper, which I feel like is at the heart.
That's my
That is
goal.
that is at the
That's my
heart.
goal.
Yes, I love that.
I want to catch you guys up. I want to see what you've missed and get you caught up so you can know the touchstones and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a perfect segue. Please let us know what you guys thought of the fight if you watched it, or if you haven't, then we got another homework assignment for you, Scott. What's the homework assignment for this week?
Going back to UFC 139, so not quite as old as Chris Tuchscherer getting one in the pills, but we've got Mauricio Shogun Hua against Dan Henderson the first time that they fought, which somehow didn't happen in Pride as much as these guys were Pride legends. They were luminaries near the end of the run of Pride. They didn't fight until they got to the UFC, but they rewarded the wait.
Absolutely. And then going off of that with our MMA lore, the history, what happened this week in MMA?
We're going back to July 5th, 2008. There's never been a UFC event on July 4th, by the way. I was kind of looking for one. Couldn't find
Interesting
one.
tidbit.
UFC 86, Quentin Rampage Jackson against Forrest Griffin. This was the fight where Griffin went from being a popular, well-liked, original Ultimate Fighter winner to legitimate UFC light heavyweight champion. Rampage, coming into this one, he was a huge star at this point, having already dethroned another star in Chuck the Iceman Liddell, who that was kind of a lot of people's entryway into the UFC at that time for the belt. Defended it against in the UFC versus Pride unification bout, none other than Dan Henderson. Honestly, you can go back and watch this fight. This is a terrific fight, dude. I would go watch Rampage and Griffin too.
Might
You
as
don't
well.
have to make that your homework, but you
That's
might as
an
well. You
extra
got no
credit.
fight. You're not gonna watch these fights this weekend. That's extra credit.
Yeah.
I would watch that on Saturday, dude. That's you usually watching fights on Saturday. Put that one on. You're gonna have fun.
Absolutely. Alrighty, I'll put that on the agenda. So Scott, and to everyone back home, enjoy your Independence Day weekend. And we'll see you next week. Enjoy the homework assignment. Enjoy the PFL fights if you're watching, and enjoy the weekend. Yeah, we'll see you next time.